Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sunday, March 23rd, 2025, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Champaign, Illinois. You're joining me for Design Diary Update number 8 for New York Noir, the game that I've been working on for the last, over 2 years now, with lots of help from people in the channel. Let me just check in, make sure everyone can hear me. YouTube says 14 concurrent viewers. Lots to talk about today, and lots that I want to get your feedback on. Sort of important. Most of the time this game is on automatic, but occasionally there are things that get done that I really could use some feedback on. But before I get started, let me do a little bit of bookkeeping. Tonight at 11 p.m., we'll play a game. I'm not sure what we'll play. I'm open to suggestions, maybe a cold case game, maybe an escape room game. You let me know. Next week, next Sunday at 1 p.m., we'll return to our normal play-by-mail sessions Sunday afternoon, except that we're going to be doing something a little different, which is instead of reading a Dear Holmes letter, we're going to be reading through a set of letters, mail-based mystery that unfolds, written by our very own Anna, who joins us for playthroughs often. She's written a set of letters. We'll start those next Monday, so I hope you can, next Sunday, I hope you can join for that. If you're local to Champaign, Illinois, or the surrounding areas, the local board game design group here just wrapped up their last session. That's a group called Kudo Plays. I highly recommend, if you're interested in board game design, to have something like that, a little contest, a little thing to give you a hard deadline. And they'll be starting up the new season soon. If you've got a little itch to make a board game, that's the perfect excuse. It's not high pressure. They're not highly polished games typically. So yeah, it's a great place to dip your toe in. Okay, anything else? This is not going to be an overview of New York Noir, formerly called High and Low. So if you're just stumbling on this video and you want to know what this game is about, let me suggest that you go back and watch Game Design Diaries like 5, 6, and 7, have more of an overview. This is going to be mostly sort of new stuff. Okay. So where should we start? Where's my little overview here? Here's what we're going to cover today. The first thing we're going to start out with is something that's very exciting, which is new box art from Adam Hall, who's in the channel with us. And Adam made this first box image, which I loved, back when the game was called High and Low, and it's got this amazing cigarette forming the cigarette smoke, and the detective. You can see it better from this view. Now, I had to mess with it a little bit and disturb a little bit of Adam's placement to get the box layout, but you can see like the sides, and then the back had no planning at all. I just stuck this horrible plain text back, and this is the box I've been carrying around with me when I demonstrate the game. And I love it. It's very motivational. High and Low, an Akira Kurosawa movie that is one of my favorite film noirs. But a little bit of a problem with the board game box, the title High and Low, is that it's not really, it's one of these situations where it's meaningful to me because I know the movie that it came from, but other people see the name and they think, oh, what is this, a trick-taking game? If they don't see the box, it's not really communicating what it is. Now, for a game like this that has no ambitions of getting into retail stores, maybe it doesn't matter, but I was thinking it would be nice to have a name that was conveyed a little bit more about what the game is. So we've switched over to a new name called New York Noir or New York Noir Mysteries. And that's one of the questions I have for the group that we need to make a hard decision on soon. Should it just be called New York Noir, or should it be called New York Noir Mysteries? And I guess calling it New York Noir Mysteries is sort of doubling down on the idea of say what it is right up front so people know what they're getting into. But Adam Hall had a bit of a challenge, which is that I love this image, but there's no more ampersand. Like, what was Adam going to do? And so I'm going to show you the new box cover images. And I think we need a little bit of feedback, opinion on which version of the text you like best, and then more opinion on sort of the tagline subheading. So let's see if I can bring this up here. Oh, I should go over the overview. So we're going to do the box art. Then we're going to do a little bit neighborhood map update. I'll talk a little bit about the software that I've been spending most of my time working on for the last couple months and where it's going. I'm going to mention a little role-playing game spin-off set of rules for New York Noir. Talk a little bit about the pieces of New York Noir that are still missing. I'll do my call for volunteers. Boy, I would really love to have a couple more volunteers for some key things. Talk about an updated timeline for the game to get produced, and where to learn more and where to play a demo case. Okay. Now circling back to the box art. Let's see if I can bring this up for you. All right. So let's see if we can do this. Here is our old box art. Let's see, is this better? I don't know why it's not bigger on your screen. In fact, this is stretched. That's not right. We don't want that. And that's cutting off. Is that cutting off anything? A little bit. Why is this stretched? If I rotate it. Is that? I think maybe that's better. Okay, here's our old box art, which I love. The detective searching for clues. Okay, ready for the new box art? All right, which way do I scroll this? This way? No. Okay, here we go. All right, so we've got the new title, a little tagline, and now you can see that he's, let me see if, yeah, I guess that's full screen, is it? Whoa, okay. So there you go. The smoke is turned into a question mark. We've got New York Noir. Now we're playing with different versions of this text. Here's the noir word that I like the best, with a little bit of offset printing, little error glitchiness there. But you can see it's been switched to a pipe. We've got a new name and a little tagline. So I'm open to other taglines. I'm not 100% attached to this. I know it's grammatically a little weird, but there's something about that tagline that I like. And here's our detective sort of standing over Manhattan searching for clues. I love the switch to a pipe. I feel like that gives him a little bit more character. The actual protagonist of the campaign smokes a pipe, not cigarettes, so I like that a little bit better. I love the way that I love the new title. I think that's fine. We're going to still use high and low for the campaign set of cases. But okay, so I'm going to show you a couple different versions of the New York Noir text to see if you have an opinion about it. And I'd love to have suggestions for this little tagline at the bottom. I like this one, but I'm open to other suggestions. Now, just as exciting as the new cover is, oh, here's the sides. Okay, so Adam Hall has worked up a little bit of the sides. Now, I love this because little magnifying throwback to Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I think if you saw this box on the shelf somewhere, you would know that it's sort of a detective game. You would feel like it's what you're going for. Yeah, and this is the Adam Hall's more intended. Actually, this was a second version that he did, but yes, it looks more like he's standing on the buildings now, looking for clues. I love the sides. I love this little, everything is evocative. Like this magnifying glass and these little silhouettes feel like, you know, what would be going through a detective's mind. Like everyone is a suspect or everyone is a potential witness. I just love that idea. Okay, and then look at this. Here's the new back of the box, which I love. Like, I feel like the great thing about this art that Adam has done is that you sort of look at it, and I think, you know, when you see this thing with the booklets, it's either going to be the game for you or not. Like, you're going to know when you see that this is the game you want to play, or this is not for you. For me, if I saw this, I'd be like, I don't care the price. This is what I want. I want the hundreds of pages to go through. So I love how he's captured, and you can see this background image here. You've got a cup of coffee at the top and the old telephone and matchbook. It just conveys it really well to me. And then Adam has come up with this idea around the sides of the box. He used names from the phone book, and then you can see he's highlighted my name. And so what we're going to do is be able to put in all the contributors to New York Noir, all the people who have helped, volunteered, will be in that around the side of the box text. Their names will be embedded there. So lots of room to put lots of contributors in that around the side of the box. Now, here's the big thing that I want suggestions for, which is this text at the bottom and at the top. So I've been just playing with different versions of this regarding how to give some flavor to the top and to the bottom. So the year is 1929. That part, I'm totally open to alternate ideas. And then at the top here in the heart of New York City, I'm not wedded to any of this. It's very important that, from my standpoint, that we mention Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So I'm trying to convey what's different about this and what kind of game it is. And you can see we've got information down here about players, age, time, etc. So I'm happy to have different suggestions for these texts. So if you have suggestions, I hope you will post them as comments or on the Discord or on the Board Game Geek page for New York Noir. I'd love to have ideas. All right, so what else has changed? I'm going to show you, okay, is there a case included in the core box, says Andy. Okay, this is a, yeah, Adam did an amazing job. We should all thank Adam. All right, so this question about a case in the core box, this is a great question. And so let me think the best way to answer this. Let's go to this. Okay, so the box we have here is like 12 by 11 by 5 or 6 inches. And as it gets deeper, it gets more expensive because it's a custom size box. So we switched in the new box to, I think it's like 11.5 by 11.5, or no, it's 12 by 12. It's a standard board game box, and we didn't make it quite as tall. So it's like 3.5 inches. It's the standard size of a box, like if you see behind me, Legends of Andor, Ultri, that dimensions, but a little bit thicker than Legends of Andor, but a standard size box, and not as tall as this. Now, the consequence of that is that no case books, if we print out the case books, are going to fit in this box. And there's a reason for that. If you see Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, the case books are fairly thin, and the documents are not as big. So if we stack up the main documents for the game, what you've got is this will easily fit in the main box and a little bit spare, maybe an inch of spare or so. But the problem is, right now at least, here is one large case booklet for New York Noir. Okay, this is my case, the wrong book. Now, the intent is to release New York Noir with a dozen cases, with a full campaign of cases, and we currently have, I've written 2 cases, a little short introductory tutorial case, then a big case, and now Anna is writing 3 cases, and Rocky wrote a case, and Water wrote a case. We're going to have at least a dozen cases when this releases. Now, the intent is not to get this into retail, but to have it available so that you could purchase it. Maybe Kickstarter, maybe just finding a print and play. So I think, here's my guess. My thinking is that the box, that there will be 2 boxes, essentially. That there will be this one box, which is the core components. And this is the box that you'd play. So when you buy Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, each box you play is not an expansion. It's sort of a standalone thing. It's got the map, the directories, and the cases in it. That's not going to be the case here for New York Noir. The components, the core components, the directories, the maps are so large, they're so expensive and big, that I think the thing we're going to do is have a box of components that you would use for free fan-made cases. For any cases you would have that box. And then the campaign of cases, or a box of cases, each little set of cases, if you wanted to have you could download and print and play them, or play them on a tablet, or if you wanted to buy the full campaign set of printed cases, that would be a separate box, and you could imagine it's going to be another stack this high of 12 of these cases. So 2 boxes. It can't all fit in one box. That's the point. The point is, it was never going to fit in one box with the large case, with a set of 12 cases. So whether we probably could include one or two cases. The demo case could be in the main box. But yeah, so I think maybe the demo tutorial case would be in this box. And then you could just remember, the whole point of this is to be an open source tool for people to write cases. So a huge amount of effort is being put into to make tools available so fans can write their own cases. So you could download, print and play cases, but you're not going to be going into a store and buying this anyway. But obviously we'll need to communicate on the box once that decision is final that this is just the base set. But if it gets sold on Kickstarter or at some print and place, there'd be two things to buy, or two things to get: the core set and a set of cases. All right, so I think we're on board with that. Let me just show you a couple more images. So yeah, okay, so there's the back of the box. So no matter what, though, there's going to have to be one box for core components and then a separate box for cases if you wanted to have them in physical form rather than print and play them. Okay, then I have a couple more mock-ups of the front with the Noir text in different versions or different bottom text. So here's the one I like, but here would be one with a simpler Noir, and then here's one with the yellow text for Noir. I don't know why I got attached to the red text, sort of because of the green and red stop and go, high and low, good and evil stuff. But here's a mock-up from Adam of New York Noir Mysteries, if we wanted to put mysteries in the title. And Adam has just come up with crime-solving game system as a little tagline subheading. And then here's little different versions of the word noir. I think we're all agreed that the green New York is good, but we're not sure about the noir. And then there's some possibilities for the smoke. Could be yellow or blue. I'm open to suggestions, and I'd like to hear suggestions. Here's a plain yellow noir. It's always sort of tempting to go for the 3D stuff because it sort of stands out. I like this one because it's a little bit like glitchy, like you're doing offset printing and it's not perfect, like when you get a silk screen shirt or something and it's not quite perfect. Oops. All right, so there you have it. So I want to hear which of these you like best, what subtitle stuff you like best, or if you have alternate suggestions. Boy, I love the way that back looks. All right, we could hear some ideas now right away. Let's see. I love the yellow noir with the drop shadow. Perhaps should be the same style on the sides of the box as the front, whatever the final decision is. That's a good point, because right now I only have the offset red. Right now the sides are just the pure yellow, no matter what the front is. Okay, so Andy was saying he likes this one. You like better, Andy? Do I have a... Let's see if I can get it back so we can see it better. Okay, so let me see here. Is this what I want? Yes, okay. I love the yellow noir with the drop shadow. Perhaps should be the same style on the sides. That's a good point. Debbie says, I like the offset one. I'd like to see it on the rest of the title as well. You mean you like this one, but you'd like to see the green have that offset as well? Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how strongly. I don't feel super strongly. I do like this one has a little pencil thin outline on the New York, which I like. So I do like that look at least. And that's on the sides as well. It's a little hard to see it in small print. But maybe if it's going to be the same now, I think we're agreed that the back title is going to look different. I can see the appeal of consistency, but the back is sort of a different situation. It's kind of given a neon effect, so I'm not sure we're going to put the same. Buddha Bell says, I like the red noir with the yellow shadow. Do you mean this one? Or do you mean this one? I like the lavender New York. You like this one. Marco says, I like the back cover style and colors for the font. I love that seems like a neon effect in the word New York. That would be an option to use this look on the front instead of the green. The green one looks good to me though. But yes, that's an option. If I go through them in order, this is the order. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Noir implies a dark color, not red. Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Although yellow is not really a dark color. Yeah, I don't have, there's certain things I have very strong feelings about and certain things I don't. Like I like the pencil outline on the word New York quite a bit. A little hard to see here, but if we zoom in, we can. And of course, I love the art here, but I don't feel super strongly about this. I like the theme of green and red as matching sort of stoplights in New York City and giving this little dichotomy thing, green and red, stop, go, good, evil, high, low. But I'm completely open. Noir looks a little thin here without the effect to make it thicker. But I'm open. I think, Adam clearly has a great sense of design. So Adam is going to make the final decisions. Amato likes this one. All right. Well, I'm glad to have opinions here, but please do leave some thoughts in the comments after you've had time to consider it, or if you're watching this after the fact. Debbie says number 1. I suppose we could have a little vote right now. But I don't think a straight vote is the most useful thing. It's just Adam is here hearing some feedback about the different looks. Maybe I'll put up a little poll on the Board Game Geek page. Adam says something about the red doesn't pop. I'm not wedded. I'm not totally wedded to the red. But before everyone gets too hung up on the designs of the colors, I really want help with this text. The text at the top left, the text at the bottom. So if you can read these and offer some suggestions, either on the Board Game Geek page or on the comments here. Harry says, Noir should be a darker red, more like blood. That's an interesting idea. But I would really like some feedback on the tagline and text here and the text down here, and whether you think we should call it New York Noir or New York Noir mysteries. Drop the word mystery. Just call it New York Noir. Seems redundant. Buddha Bella says New York Noir. Does anyone think it should be called New York Noir Mysteries? I think if you were looking at the box, it may not matter. If you're looking at the box, you'd sort of get that it's mystery, or if you turned it on the back, you'd get it. The question is, if you were just scrolling through, someone mentioned a game to you, New York Noir, you might not know what it is, but if they said New York Noir Mysteries, you would know instantly what it is. Oh, it's a mystery game. That's the only real advantage of calling it Mysteries. Or New York Noir Investigations, or... Not that it... I mean, I don't know that we really need to be worried about, hey, if people see this name, will they know what it means? I mean, it's not like they're going to be ordering it. If we have a Kickstarter, then they'll see it. I'm open to suggestions. Mentioning or looking at title only, the You're the Detective, You Solve It tells me it's a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game. Yes, I agree. That's the trade-off here. We're sort of saying if we're not going to call it New York Noir Mysteries, I agree. The tagline has to then convey it. But this tagline wouldn't be in the title. It would be it's on the box cover, but like if you were looking at titles, here the title would just be New York Noir. Adam says, I'm torn. Mystery seems redundant, but also like it, might need it. I guess a secondary little question is if it's officially titled New York Noir Mysteries, do we need to put that mysteries higher up, or are people going to be confused that that's the title? Maybe that doesn't matter. I'm torn too. I mean, we're in the area now. We're in the region of it's all good. Like I'd be happy with all of it. I have detective fonts for the bottom. Well, we got a whole bunch of fonts we've been playing with, but all right. I think we should probably move on. Otherwise, we could spend all day here. All right. Let's see. What have I got next for us? Let's go back to the box art. Okay, that's what we just looked at. There's still some interesting discussion going on. Let's see. Mystery sounds more passive. I like the mysteries at bottom. I'd end up calling it New York Noir. I think it works okay without the subtitle. All right. Neighborhood map update. So let me just show you a progress report from Logan, who's been drawing buildings and doing research for the entirety of Manhattan. So here is one neighborhood. Is it not going to let me? That was poor planning on my part. It's not going to let me zoom in. Okay, that's okay. On the left, you see one neighborhood with buildings, and Logan's been, as I've talked about at length on previous updates, Logan goes through each neighborhood. There's like 35 of them, and is doing full research about what buildings were where at what time, what were historical, architecturally interesting, and then he's finding art for them, putting them in the right place, and improving the art with this line drawing style. And on the right, what you see is his progress report. These are all the neighborhoods he's gone through and done. So he is on track to finish all of the art for all of the neighborhoods by the end of the year, I think. And he's also doing research about places, and Buddha Bell has been helping do research as well. So he's not only doing the art, but he's finding bugs in the real places in the directories. And all of these buildings still have to have their labels added to them on the maps, and resized and fit in, and the numbers moved around them to make sure they're not overlapping everything. So that's on the left is an example of a first pass. So we're going to tweak all of these buildings and their looks. And then also these buildings, we have higher resolution versions of them that will automatically be brought into the casebook. So if you're writing a case where the players visit the Empire State Building, in addition to the Empire State Building being on this map, a bigger, higher resolution version could be brought in to the paragraph they read. So all of this building art, these hundreds of buildings of how they really looked in this line art style, will also be available for case authors in their cases. Okay, now another change that is a little bit controversial, but I am very happy about because I think it just worked out very cleanly, is the change of the name for Negro Harlem, which is an awkward thing to say. Now, it was referred to as Negro Harlem in some of our favorite books about the time. It is not, on the face of it, offensive, but it is jarring to modern ears. And I've written an essay about how there's lots of stuff in this game that's going to be jarring for modern ears, and lots of room for engaging in some of those issues in cases that get written, whether it's the misogyny of the New York noir tropes and the time, and the homophobia and racism and all that stuff. Is all fair game for people who want to write about it and write cases. But it was always a little awkward to have people looking through these documents and come across the official name for a neighborhood being Negro Harlem. It's hard to say it. So there is the area. Okay, so Logan and I were talking about it, and the neighborhoods are actually one areas where there's some license taken in the game. So these are all real neighborhood names, but the neighborhood boundaries and naming in Manhattan changes over the years, and it's all unofficial. And I've had to tweak neighborhood boundaries to get these map sizes well suited to fit one per page. So like a real stickler is going to look at that and say, wait a second, you've made Little Italy start here instead of here. It should be north a block or two, and so on. Anyway, that's all by way of saying that these feel like what we're calling them the official names in sort of the directory, the atlas, the official atlas. So what we're doing is we're changing the NH neighborhood to North Harlem. So the official name in this atlas is going to be North Harlem. Here's already Central Harlem, and then we've got Italian Harlem and Spanish Harlem. Those are staying. But NH is now officially going to be referred to as North Harlem. However, that's not to say that characters and story won't refer to it by its sort of nickname or the name that people refer to it. So it'll be North Harlem here in the directory, North Harlem here in the official heading, but the first line of the overview will say Colloquially named as colloquially named as Negro Harlem. North Harlem is considered the area of Harlem above 125th Street. So the guidebook is not going to shy away from referring to it as Negro Harlem, and you'll probably, most of the people you run into might refer to it that way. But the official name in the title, and the sort of what you might think of as the city's official name for it, will be North Harlem. In general, if you find maps of this period, you won't find it so cleanly delineated into these sections. It's just going to be a general reference to Harlem as an area, but we've broken it up to make it more suitable for one-page neighborhoods. So I don't feel like it's breaking any authenticity pact, but it's a little cleaner and it's a little less of putting an official name of it as a nickname that was never an official name. So to me, I feel like it's a good compromise. But you could see when I discussed it, there was a little bit of people saying, don't start compromising stuff. There's lots of places that people could get upset about, from the smoking on the front and all the portrayals of smoking and people using language. So I just want to make clear this is already good. There's going to be plenty of offensive stuff in this game to people. I don't think there's a way you can go back to 1930s and film Noir and not have it feel anachronistic and offensive to some people, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I do like this change. It feels to me like it was a little bit of it was not unnecessarily in your face having the official name in the atlas be that. And I think this is a perfect compromise, and it's still the same abbreviations, etc. All right, so if anyone wants to speak up against that change, now is the time. Or you don't have to speak up in public on the channel, but you could post on the Board Game Geek page or send me an email, whatever. Okay, so that's that. I feel good about it, though. To me, it's like choosing your battles, and that's not even a battle. I don't even feel like that's a compromise. To me, that's a great change. And like I said, people will still be referring to it in-game characters where it can be given some context. Okay. Next, let me talk about the software updates, which is what I've been working on so hard for months and months. The casebook tools for building cases. This is the software I've written, website that's generating the LaTeX documents that are these cases. I've shown these a bunch, but this is the tool that produces, sorry, let me see if I can get you a better view here. That's the tool that produces these books that lay out cases and do all the fancy stuff and can format these books in different sizes and handles markers and generally ensures that everything is laid out consistently. This is the demo case, so I'm not worried about spoiling stuff here. The tool that produces this is used with a little language that I call casebook. And anyway, that's what I've been working on. And I wanted to show you a couple of things that got added. So if we just go, we could take a look at the website for it. Here's the website. I'm going to change that image in a second, but you can see it's got games that have been published for New York Noir. And if you're an author, this is where you would go and write your case and build it. So here's our demo case here. The Past is a Crooked Game. And you can see here I've told it to build it in a whole bunch of formats, whether it's a format for reading on a tablet, so one lead per page, or whether it's to be printed out, which would give you something like this, traditional Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, well, Space Cowboys version. And the tool can also do a whole bunch of stuff like produce these produce debug builds, which show the author all kinds of extra information. In fact, if we go to my larger case, the wrong book, and we look at the generated mind map, we can see here is the mind map for my larger case, so sort of plot map that the debug tool can create. So people sometimes wonder, like, why go to so much effort to build this tool to lay out these books? Why not just let someone use a word processor to lay out the books? And I've talked at length about different reasons why it's so useful. This tool can find problems, can help you identify issues. It can format it in different page sizes or for playing on a tablet. But the other thing that this tool will let us do is make these cases available to play online with a sort of interactive thing, and support play-by-mail cases where you submit moves by mail and get a letter reply. I've gone into that previously a bunch, and I'll surely return to it. But what I wanted to show you today, where is my list of what's new here? Okay, so let me just get out some recent printouts here. So I've been making some demo cases to show how to use. So the sample case, part of the sample case was to make a case that's easy to play tutorial, but also you can look at the source code, the casebook source code that generates this. But I asked Martinez Conradi, one of the most prolific Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective authors, to send me one of his cases for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, so I could give an example to authors of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective fan cases of how to use the tools to make Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective cases. So here is Martinez's case, which I just quickly converted to casebook format. So you can see it produces a nice table of contents. If you want to set an option to not show the leads, you can do that. And here's Martinez's case, just laid out for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. These are features of the tool to let you make typewritten stuff there. The newspaper formatting I've been working on a lot. So, most Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective cases use a newspaper. This is just an example of one of the newspaper layouts you can choose. So as an author, designing a newspaper is one of the places where the fan-made cases sometimes fall flat. They don't look very good. Here, this is a case where you just say it's a copy of the London Times. Here's the date, and here's a section and a headline and the text. And the casebook tool does all this layout and formatting for you. You can tweak all sorts of things to get it to fit on a page. You can tweak the line spacing, the number of columns. In fact, if I bring up one of my little feature demos. So the other thing I made is a little feature demo that shows various things of using different fonts. But here are some different examples of some newspaper. You can set up landscape layout. It's got different banners for different newspapers in New York at the time. Just different examples of how you could lay out your newspaper differently. You could make there's a little function for making short little excerpts of a newspaper. You could change, obviously, the font size, the headline. You could easily switch them all to caps. Just nothing super fancy, just various things that you could easily change the look of a newspaper. And as an author, you don't have to worry about doing any of that. You just write your main text and let the tool do the work of making it look a certain way with the drop caps and different ways of styling the headlines, etc. So this is Martinez's case converted to be generated by the casebook tool. So you can see the neighborhood headings, and it sorts all the paragraphs, etc. So if you're not interested in New York Noir, but you are interested in making Sherlock Holmes consulting detective fan cases, I hope the tool will be useful for you. And then Rob on our Discord had a suggestion about using a lookup table. So there are a couple. One of the issues in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is while you're reading a lead, your sort of neighboring location numbers are nearby, right? Like you might be going to read 10 EC and then you notice there's a 30 EC. You might read a little bit about that. It's a little dangerous that the neighborhood places are so near to each other. And a good example, though, of why using a tool to produce these cases is so useful, in addition to being able to format it differently or play it online, is you could set an option and say, okay, produce me the book, except use a paragraph lookup table. And so that's what this looks like. So in this version, every paragraph is numbered, more like a typical choose your own adventure book. And you can see the subheading has the location if you want it. And now they're randomly assigned numbers. So if you wanted to go to 10 Southwest, you'd look up 10 Southwest, and then you'd try to go read paragraph 501. So just an example of how the tool can produce a different style book from the same source. It's the same exact source that made this one, Martinez's original case. The book can lay out with paragraph numbers this way, which has in addition to scrambling up the things, another advantage to this is that if you have branching paragraphs, like if you say you approach this thing, do you want to do A or B? That can all be handled automatically by the tool. The tool can do things like you say, when you're writing the case, you would say, if they choose this, say this. If they choose this, say this. And the game will automatically assign a unique number to each of the different choices and scatter them in. And when you do that in the typical Sherlock Holmes consulting detective case, if you want to branch someone depending on their action, you typically have to send them to some like fixed neighborhood, like the other place neighborhood or whatever. But here, those places can be mixed in organically. And just for fun, here's the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective lookup table. But just for fun, I made one for Mythos Tales, another Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective style game that doesn't have more than one or two fan-made cases. But if you wanted to use this to make a Mythos Tale, you could use the same tool to make cases for Mythos Tales or, in fact, Bureau of Investigation. But just for fun, I added features to support a table lookup system for people who want to make cases for Bureau of Investigation or Mythos Tales. And here's a version where interview and investigator are different or where they're the same. So I think that covers almost all or all of the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective type games. So you can use this tool to make such games. Anything else to talk about? I did that. Okay, and then if you look at the feature demo for this tool for Casebook, I'm making one document that shows all the different things you can do, like different fonts and stuff, different newspapers. Oh, I see. I didn't. We've got a whole fingerprint database of hundreds of footprints you could use. I mean, I haven't shown today the fingerprint directory and criminal history directory. You can watch my previous live streams, diaries, to hear me talking about that. But the tool knows how to bring all those things in how to format stuff differently, how to make nice looking scoring forms. I didn't print out the stuff that brings in fingerprints, but there are all sorts of tools and all sorts of functions in this tool to help you focus on writing cases without having to worry about layout stuff. But I didn't. Did I bring up? If I go into this feature demo, oh, okay, I can show you it a little bit. So we played recently Razorhurst by John Keane, the follow-up, Blood Alley, and War Story by David Neal, the author of one of my favorite boxes for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. And they both had a little evolution of the marker system. War Story uses a track that gets advanced as you go that can have some effects. And Razorhurst had an interesting thing where it had a set of markers and it said circle this marker if you see this and then cross it out or underline it. It had a different way of referring to markers. And the Casebook tool has a whole system for dealing with markers, to have markers that you're required to find at the beginning of each day and a log. I guess it's not in this one, but it surely is in here. So we have this case log for people to track time, and when they find markers, they could circle them and add notes. And this is sort of where you would track as you play the game. But after Razorhurst and War Story, I made a couple modifications to, it's not seen in this printout, but to keep track of where you are on a track and various things. And this demonstration, which shows you a little about using markdown syntax and formatting images. But here are some examples of the kind of things. Now, you could write this text by hand, of course, but Casebook has some support to help you keep track of some of these things like circle, underlying markers, strike through, checking them for certain conditions. The advantage of using little functions for this is you don't have to remember to write out all this text. You don't have to remember to phrase it the same way. You just say, I want a little instruction here about marker B1, and it'll fill this in. It's also got support for translating this stuff into different languages. And so different examples here of things like advancing tracks and doing different things with the markers. Anyway, just stuff to support different kinds of common stuff that you might do when you're writing a case. But also the other advantage of having the functions to do it is those functions know a little bit about how to run the game interactively when we get to making a little playtesting app for this or the play-by-mail stuff. So here's just an example of fingerprints. So in this case, if you were writing this case, if you look at the source to this, it says go and get out the fingerprint for this person, their left index finger. And that's what then it knows, okay, in the fingerprint directory, here are the different people's fingerprints. So the code to produce this set of fingerprints, like this one in the middle, just says go get the left index finger of this person and bring it in. And that's what gives you this little top image, or go get their entire fingerprint set. And then just various examples of laying out stuff in different ways. There's whole sets of support for doing ciphers and codes, and doing little found notes with different font and typewriters. We found a dozen different typewriter fonts, a couple dozen handwriting fonts, just to make it easy for you to do this kind of stuff and easy for you to change. So if you've got like 5 notes by a certain person and you just have to make one change to their handwriting font and all their notes will change. I've written a whole big essay on proper use of ciphers and codes in these kinds of games. Spoiler alert, most of the time you're better off not putting them in, but there are some functions here for different codes you might use. These are ciphers, keyword ciphers, Morse code, a whole bunch of different ciphers. Little support functions for redacting text, since that's something that's commonly done. Some handwriting, sample fonts, and then you saw already the newspapers and footprints and various forms for burned forms and etc. Okay. And then there's a sample of that. So if you're interested in authoring, you can take a look at how to do all sorts of stuff. And there's already a couple tutorials on YouTube for how to use the tool. Okay. Moving along. I am not a big role. Should we take a break and see if there's any questions here? All right, let me see if there's any more questions before I move along. Okay, newspaper's looking good. Fingerprints. Look, does the program make police reports? Okay. You're getting a little bit ahead of me, but when we get to the volunteers still needed, I'm going to talk about that kind of thing. Any other questions about the tool? You can visit that website right now. You can use it. It's fully working. You can use it to build cases. You create an account. You'll have to message me to give you authorship permission on the website to start making cases. But you can also look at my documentation for that casebook language and tool. And I'll be making more tutorials on how to use it soon. Okay, let me move along here. We're not too far from the end. So I'm not a huge role-playing game person. I like hard and fast rules. But we were playing with the idea of making a role-playing game out of this world, using these tools to make role-playing games. There are a couple of noir role-playing games, one called Gumshoe System, which is quite popular, but there are others. There's Noir World. There's a whole bunch of others, and more or less focused on mystery or storytelling. But I had a much more narrowly focused idea for a role-playing game that was very, very minimally role-playing, but more where the GM runs the game. So I've written up some ideas and rules, 2 documents, an idea document, but now I've written up a first draft of like an official rule set for it. And I don't know, it's 15 or so pages, and you can look at different, it's got a couple different modes, from the easiest mode where the GM basically just reads the book and runs the game, but it's a standard game. So a GM would get a case book, like the wrong book here, and rather than people, there's a lot of reading that happens in New York Noir and these kinds of games. So instead of the players reading it, the GM's role would be basically to read the introduction to the players and then run the game. So the GM would keep track of markers and what time of day it is and all that stuff. And the players would just sit with the directories and they'd say, okay, we want to go to this guy's house. And then the GM would read that section and so on, and keep track of all the behind the scenes stuff. So the players would just listen to the story and decide where to go. And then there's a slightly more advanced modes where the players actually, where the GM improvises scenes. So rather than reading the scenes out when the player goes somewhere, they would improvise the scene as the GM, but still a very strict format. There's no skill test, no dice rolling. It's just the one real mystery that they are going to have to solve at the end, and the players basically decide where to go, and then they either have a dialogue scene where they're improvising with the GM plays the non-player characters, or they're searching around where the GM is telling them what the results of their search are. So, and then there's some a little advanced rules in there, some ideas about how to give players little side backstories. So if you are a role-playing game person or a little bit more, have more affinity towards that, I'd love some feedback on that. And I think I'm going to set up a little test playthrough. I'm going to run a little role-playing game with some friends here to see how well that works. Much stricter format. If you've got people that are interested in, you know, having their characters, spending a day building their characters with different skills and stuff, this is not really for them. This is more like an improvised mystery. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can see on the Board Game Geek Guild page for New York Noir, there is a link to both documents, the draft guidebook and my idea document. I'd love for some feedback. I think that's going to be a case where we really could use someone else other than me to run with this role-playing game and maybe try running a session. If this scratches an itch, if you've got some people that you think might be like to play a mystery but don't want to do all the reading, this might be a good thing. I'd love to hear from someone who wants to try it. You just take the normal cases and you GM them. So there's a couple cases now you could use this with, including the introductory case, which would probably be the easiest place to start. Okay, I'm curious about that. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's missing, what we haven't solved yet in New York Noir. Now, most of this is sort of like an open world toolkit for people. And so, you know, if people want something that's not here, they can add it. But there is one piece that we don't have a good handle on. I don't have a great handle on, and that's the allies and informants part of Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style systems. In every version of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, right from the original down to Mythos Tales and Bureau of Investigation, there's a list of about 10 people that are your allies that you can visit if you need. Well, they serve multiple roles. In Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective and spin-offs, multiple roles and somewhat contradictory, which I don't like, because they're used as sort of regulars. Like if you watch a TV show, you've got your regulars, and there's something very comforting about knowing, okay, there are these 10 people I can talk to. I can talk to the newspaper guy or Lestrade, the cop, or whatever. And so they're familiar faces that talk in a certain way. They have very specific personalities. It's sort of fun to talk to them. They also frequently act as hints, which is the part I don't love. When we play, we typically avoid visiting them because sometimes they give away information we don't want given to us. On the other hand, sometimes they're critical because they're playing a research role, like the newspaper, which might be, the newspaper archives might be critical to a case, or someone's divorce records or will might be critical to a case. So you never know if you need to go to them, if they're going to crack the case wide open or give you a hint or just be for flavor. So they're doing a whole bunch of different things, but they are fun to have. And we don't have a great way to do that yet in New York Noir. What I mean by that is we haven't figured out what's the best evolution of that system. It seems like it's ripe for evolution. It's ripe to explore some ideas, and that's what we're trying to do here, is explore ideas. But I'm not sure. Like, I don't want them to be hints. The whole point of New York Noir is these should be hard games that are very carefully set up so you can get help and you will see everything important by the end if you need it, but you aren't given help without wanting help. And one of the problems with us adding allies and informants to New York Noir is that New York Noir is much more fine-grained. So there is this research guide in New York Noir with a list of common places you might go to do different kinds of research. And you can see it's much more fine-grained. There aren't just 10 in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, you know, there's the cab records guy. There's the person who handles wills and divorces. Okay, well, in New York Noir, there's a much more fine-grained, larger scope to here. Here we've got different newspaper contacts, library you can go to. If there is a central cab, but every neighborhood has its own cab company you might talk to, and different courts and different things. So we could just say, okay, look, every one of these places is going to be a regular character that if you go there, you're going to see them. But in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, each of your 10 allies is typically in each case. And that serves different roles, sort of. And here I've made a little list of some of them, but there's something enjoyable when you're playing Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. If you've run out of places to go, you're like, all right, let's go to one of our allies. You know, we're sort of turning our wheels, spinning our wheels. Let's just go visit someone we know, or we need a little break. And that's not really present in New York Noir. In New York Noir, these places are generally not populated for a given case. Only one or two in a specific case might be very specifically useful. Now, one way, so I'm open to ideas here for how to do this. I think the closest thing we do in this kind of, for this kind of thing in New York Noir cases currently, the sort of norm, the established pattern, is to have friendly faces pop up in your case. And frequently you have a choice. Do you want to do this? Do you want to talk to this person or that person? So one way we might handle this is much more formally set up a structure where in each given case, you might be expected to have a choice of, you know, one of three recurring characters to go have a drink with, to go talk to. And so that over the course of many cases, you'd be sort of picking friends to hang out with and have to make choices there. But I'm open to some ideas. Another option is just to say, okay, we're going to have recurring characters that are, you know, maybe some of them are in some of these places, but that are just going to inject themselves into the case regularly and serve that sort of NPC friendship role where you can get used to knowing if you talk to this person. Or we could pick out a certain places that are common in most cases and say, okay, here are the 10 places that most cases should provide an entry for. That would be an option. And communicate to players that, you know, these 10 places are not often going to be relevant to your case, but frequently will have people that you could go talk to that you know and be friends with. But it's not so easy because the New York Noir cases are meant to span a wider range from like 20s to 50s, so people could turn over here. You might not expect to meet the same people. But it's missing from the game right now. The recurring characters that you can choose to go to as sort of comedic relief out of boredom, that is not present yet. And for authors, I think it's important to we want to give them some guidance about that. I think players will miss it, and authors could invent their own, but I think this is one of these things where having a standard, having a system that people know they can expect, that authors can write to, would be important. So if anyone has some more ideas about that or wants to talk about it, jump in the Discord or in the Board Game Geek page for New York Noir and we can talk about it. I'd like to find something experimental and new and interesting to do about it. Oops, I already did that. Okay, so here's my volunteers. All right, we're reaching the end here. Okay, so the one I'd really like the most is a front-end coder who can take the directory information. Actually, Water or Dispaminite, I forget which one of you, actually made an initial online searchable of directories. But I need someone to really embrace this as a standalone little tool. I think it would be useful for a couple reasons. First of all, it'd be useful for authors if they could very quickly search for all doctors, all people in this neighborhood, all people named Smith when they're writing cases and get a nice looking list. And also, we want to make it possible for people to play test games digitally. I think the ideal way to play test is to have a physical version of the directories, but be able to get a quick new version of a brand new case that's undergoing rapid changes and play that case digitally, either through a PDF or ideally through a little app where you can just type in where to go and it'll tell you, and that would track when people try to go places that aren't implemented in the case. Then the author could see, here are all the places people are trying to go that I don't have an entry for, I should add it, or could easily click a button and give feedback to the author. Okay, this entry has a typo, this entry didn't work, there's a bug here. So an online playtesting tool that will use the data provided by the casebook tools and let you do online searching and online playtesting. It's a project that could start small but be big. I'd love to find someone who really wants to take that on and make it enjoyable. Always looking for more authors to write cases. And this is not a profit project. I hope that we're far enough along that we are going to get it produced. Maybe Kickstarter, maybe just finding a place to produce it, but the goal is not going to be to make a profit off this. The materials are going to be so expensive to produce, it's going to be hard enough to get people to pay for the costs. But the one thing we will try to do is have volunteers get a copy of the physical materials. And then I'd like to keep building a mailing list of people willing to playtest games. Playtesting the games is a different experience because you're playing them before the bugs are solved. But these cases are so hard as an author. It's so hard to playtest these games. You can't playtest it yourself. You're writing this mystery, and it's hard to know how people are going to experience it. So it's very important for us to have one of the things we can do to help authors is provide a nice stable of people willing to playtest and give feedback on games, and it's really invaluable. So if you're interested in playtesting games, let me know. We can get people to sign up. There's a sign up on the NewYorkNoir.org website to be added to the list, or come by the Discord. We've got already cases that we need playtesters for, and if that sounds like something you'd be willing to do, I'd love it. And then there are other areas we could use more volunteers. We could use someone to go through all the directories looking for issues and typos. We can always use more artists for various things. I'd like to, in addition to the criminal history directory and fingerprints, and now we have a footprint set of images, it would be nice to get other sort of, not directories that would be so integrated into the game, but maybe just a couple mini directories on like ballistics and various reference materials that we could give players that authors could use when coming up with cases. And then this was mentioned in the chat. I'm gonna go back to the chat and answer some questions and comments. Let me just finish this one little thing. So one of the things you can see that I've been trying to do with this casebook tool for building these cases is make things to make it easier for the author not to worry about layout and stuff. So that's the newspapers. But what I'd like to do now is also collect a whole bunch of official looking documents, whether that's autopsy forms, medical reports, crime scene reports, criminal history reports, parking tickets, all kinds of things like that. If we can find official looking documents and make templates out of them so that an author could say, okay, I want to go fill in an autopsy form for someone. Either the tool could help them completely fill it out, or we could just have a big set of facsimile documents that are blanks that an author could use to make official looking documents. A big thing that we'd like to do with New York Noir, a way to improve or evolve from the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective system, is do a little bit of a hybrid merging between cold case games, dossier games, which are focused on having official, real-looking, full-page evidence, and a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective paragraph system. So you can see that's why a bunch of the tools for New York Noir and Casebook have to do with a document section and telling the person, okay, you now have access to this document. And that's certainly made more use of in my real case. But so we want to do a little bit of a hybrid system where for authors, we have lots of realistic looking documents, full page documents that you could incorporate into your case. Okay, as I said, there is a Board Game Geek page for New York Noir. I would love it if you visit that page, there's a little heart thing on Board Game Geek where you can sign up where you can click to become a fan of the game. I'm not sure what else that does. You can subscribe to it also. You can subscribe to a page which would get you notified when something changes. That would be great. But if you do a little heart, it does put you in a list of people who are fans of the game. And anything that makes it easier for me to reach out to people when there's news about New York Noir, when it actually becomes available for purchase, or when there's big news, that would be great. So you could sign up to the New York Noir mailing list or go click the heart on this page. It's fun to see the hearts go up. This is the official forum where we discuss the game. You can also find here links to download some of the sample cases. If you're interested in getting involved, in addition to the Discord where I am, you could email me directly. All right, let me check back in with the chat. We're done with my official stuff. And now we can talk about anything anyone wants to talk about. You could just have personal context lists with recurring characters that's introduced somewhere in the beginning of the game. Maybe if the protagonist has an office when you visit that. Yeah, we could have, I think it makes sense to have a contact list that might evolve. And if people are, I hope people will make their own detectives in their own worlds. In fact, I have a little document with suggested themes and settings and different kinds of things that would be fun. Like I'd love to see people do some supernatural cases. So I think, and we've seen some beautiful business cards made for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Eric sent me a set that he made for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. If you haven't seen these, they're so beautiful. Of all the allies in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective and what their location is. And I would love to have something like this in New York Noir, but to do that, we need some contacts. But the other thing to do is for the campaign set of cases, you could imagine that this would be in a box, and as you play through the 12 campaigns, you would meet people and then take their card, and then they would be available to meet in each future case. So that's an idea I'm playing with for my campaign of 12 cases, which trace the whole career of this one detective that you play. But you could imagine in the beginning, you've got like two friends, and then you play the first case and you meet a couple people. And then the next case, you meet a couple more people, and each person you meet is available in all the subsequent cases. So a little bit, by the time you finish the game, you've got all these people that you can go visit on each case. But that's fine for campaign, but it doesn't provide any guidance for people who are writing one-off cases. So I'm open to ideas there. But yeah, the contact list that's maybe different from the research guy. I'd love to play the game just as an app instead of printed books. Yeah, I mean, most of us, we want this old school thing because we want the physical materials. But especially for playtesting, I think the most important, you could still have the physical directories in front of you, but use a tablet just to read the case. That doesn't take much away from it. And especially for playtesting, it would make life so much easier. So I think we want an online playable version of these cases for no other reason playtesting. But I think it would make a lot of sense for people, and especially for fan-made cases. Maybe you don't want to have to download and print out a big book each time. I think playing the cases on a device could be fun if you have the directories that you can lay out and the maps you can lay out physically. So there's that. I have some other ideas for how we could make a special physical little 3D printed keypad attached to an e-ink device that would be fairly cheap, that you could play these kinds of games on a hybrid screen keyboard thing, but that's for the future. Debbie says, part of the problem with Allies is there's no central campaign at the moment. People are currently writing their own separate cases with very divergent approaches. Yeah, so that's where I think like we might even just need a sort of philosophy of using Allies, so that each case might say, you know, here are 10 allies for this case that you might visit, or contacts. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Like that would be one way to do it. Imagine for every case, it's got like your Rolodex of 10 people. And that would be sort of a norm, that every case would have like, here's 10 friends you have that you could call on to talk about the case or to talk about stuff. Giving more of the main campaign might give people an idea for how allies can work. If there's going to be one central main campaign where the main helpers are introduced. Davey says, I think this would help attract more volunteers. The documents and tools are amazing. Most people are originally attracted to the story and characters. Well, I have my campaign planned out. I've got my new case I'm working on. I'm working on it. I wouldn't mind having some co-authors for the main campaign as well. But then again, I'd love to play other stories by Anna's cases look very historical. Anna's a historian, so I'm curious to play her cases. I'd love to see people tackle different detectives of very different style. A kid detective, lawyer detective, set in a supernatural New York. Maybe the helpers would be characters that have reach in the whole city, every case in every neighborhood. Or you could do the opposite way. You could have, you could have, one idea is to have, we've got 35 neighborhoods. Imagine you have one ally who knows a little bit about each neighborhood. My original idea is that you'd be able to visit a bar in each neighborhood to hear about history of the neighborhood and what's new and stuff like that. So you could imagine that each neighborhood has a contact that you are friends with. When you visit a neighborhood, when you have a case that involves a neighborhood, you might be expected to visit them. Number of main characters are always visited, like an old friend, neighbor, child, private detective. They can have something to say in all cases, but not always something helpful. Yeah, a person from each neighborhood. I like that idea. Buddha says, I play tested Anna's cases. They were fun. Any other ideas? I mean, this is sort of meant to be an experimental little toolkit. So if anyone has any other weird, interesting ideas for, I mean, obviously anyone writing a case can create whatever they want. So the real question is, are there tools that we could put into the base set, or essays we could write, or things we could explore that would provide some guidance, like some sort of standardization of something, or some tool that would, each author would know that every player is going to have access to. That's sort of how the criminal history stuff ties in. Like, here's a tool that I'm hoping to make use of in my next case, but what kinds of tools and guidelines can we provide, and characters can we build so that authors have this as their foundation to work from? Let's see, anything else to talk about? I will be at Gen Con this year for all 4 days in August. If I will bring New York Noir with me, if anyone wants to play it. I have signed up to run a couple of events. You know, they're long events, they're several hours long, but I'll be there with the game if someone wants to chat about it. Anything else? Am I done with my slides? Just a little reminder, there is a sample, quick, easy to play case you can download and play. The only real problem with playing these cases is that, you know, you have to play through you have to have all of the directories, all of the different directories, the yellow pages, the white pages, they're all, you know, you don't want to print these out yet. We're going to have a new version of these. The reverse directory and the map atlas. So it's a little bit cumbersome to be playing these all in PDF form and switching between them. But this is where we could use, if we could get someone on the online tool, online playtesting thing, which I hope is not going to have to be me. Then the only thing you'd have to download is the case, which is all hyperlinked. One of the things I didn't mention, but I mentioned before, I mean, one of the things that the tool produces is every place is hyperlinked. And when it tells you you have access to something, if you're playing this on a tablet, every place that's referred to is a clickable link. So it's actually pretty convenient to play the actual cases on a PDF. It's just doing the search of the directories is something that would be much better if we just had a live search as you type. Anything else to talk about? We've been going for an hour and a half, so probably we should wrap up soon. Tonight we'll be playing something if you just want to join me for a live playthrough of a game. That'll be tonight at 11. Any other issues, ideas? At some point, we'll start looking for translators to translate some of the tools. One of the focuses on this tool that produces these PDFs is that it uses just marked up plain text so that you could use Google Docs to write your case collaboratively with others or translate it, whatever. And then the tool just takes that marked up text and produces these books. So a major goal was not to use any kind of graphical user interface for writing your cases. It's all just text that you would normally keep in something like Google Docs. You could do version control and collaborative editing. So I'm pretty happy with that. Kickstarter ready to correct. Okay, so timeline. I do have a master timeline list that I've worked up. And the goal is to be in about a year. So my goal is in a year to have everything ready to go. Maybe a little bit more than a year, but surely before the end of 2026, to have the directories locked in, unchanging. It's hard to change them after people have started writing cases, although that's part of another thing that the tool does, is it can track changes and lock down locations so we can make new directory. But that's why you shouldn't print out directories, though, because there is going to be one more major version of the directories with lots of improvements to the ethnic naming of stuff. And if you're a volunteer, we'll get you in the directory somewhere as well. I've joked about the idea that we could sell, if you want to live in a tenement in the Bowery, then that's $1. If you want to live in a mansion on the Upper East Side, that'll be $10 to put you in the directory. But where was I going? Oh, yeah. So I think the plan will be before the end of 2026 to have everything finished, ready for production. And then we'll figure out how much it will cost people. I mean, it'll be done no one needs to make a profit on the game. It's going to be expensive enough, but it is going to be available to purchase. Now, whether we kickstart it or whether we just find a company that can produce it in small volumes, this is a niche game. There aren't going to be that many people interested. It's going to be expensive, even at cost. It's going to be, you know, over $100. I don't think there's any way you could get this printed for less. It's not a complicated manufacturing since it's all sort of wire-bound documents. And, you know, I can print off, I can make a couple of these myself. And those who are volunteering, this might be a project where, you know, only 100 copies ever get made. But if there are enough fan cases, I think it'll be worth it. If there are enough cases to play, it'll be worth it. Yeah, the Adam's box art is so motivating for me. It really helps. Like when I see that box and how good it looks, that makes me want to keep going. Would there be a master database of used names and lead numbers from the Yellow Pages so that no two cases have conflicting content for the same lead number? All of these, this is a whole separate set of software that was made to create these directories. These are all unique numbers. Every single place in New York Noir, in the Yellow Pages and 10,000 people in the White Pages, they all have a unique lead number. A unique lead number in a location. Sometimes they're in the same building. I've been over this. I've talked about this before. One of my favorite parts is when you find an apartment building. For example, you can go watch my discussions about the reverse directory and how cool it is. But when you find an apartment building, you've got residents in it on different floors and different apartments. You can visit the doorman, all this stuff. But everyone has a unique address, so there's no conflicts. When you use the tool to write a case, it keeps track of the places that are, this is the slightly older directory, by the way, but when you write a case using the casebook tool, it can see all the places you've used and make me a list so that I make sure any future directory doesn't change them. So that's the only worry about conflicts, is if a new directory comes and adds more places or removes gas stations, I need to make sure that I don't touch anything that's used in a previous case. That's part of one of the things that the tool does, is makes me a nice list. Ah, I see what you're saying. Yes, okay, that's a great idea, and yes, we do have plans for that. So here's how we're going to handle that, and something else. Logan, who's doing the building art, has been making sketches of characters that are available for case authors. So he has 100 or so, and he plans to make a couple hundred more. They're little sketches. I have them somewhere on this device, but I'm not going to bring them up. They're little sketches of characters, different personalities, but they're unnamed, and they're available for authors to use. So if authors want to write a case and they want to run into someone and you want to use a sketch of them, Logan has an art, you can claim it. And here's what we're going to do. This is addressing Yal's comment. We're going to have a wiki page which tracks used people, used leads, and assignments of character art. So that if someone has a case that happens, you know, with Mr. John Smith in apartment 2D on the Upper West Side, that directory will say, you know, here's the person that was put in that location, and here's the character art that was chosen for them. So if you write a case, you won't use them differently. You won't contradict that storyline, and you could reuse that character's personality and that character's art. And I think for the most part, I mean, in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, occasionally you get a fan case that reuses the same place. It's a much smaller directory in Sherlock Holmes, so it's much more likely that you'll get two cases that use the same person differently, same person's name differently. That's going to be pretty rare here. But you could imagine that in some of these places, like someone would write, when you visit the education records, you would meet Sally and see a picture of her. And so that would be on the wiki. So you could see, okay, I should either have the person also talk to Sally if they go to that same place or whatever. And because of different timelines, that might not always be, you might have people moving along. But yes, I don't know what we should call that, but it's basically like a continuity wiki, so that people who write cases can register, here is the person, this is what Sally looks like. You know, here's the sketch of her. Here's how I described her. And I guess that would make even more sense for the main campaign, because the main campaign is going to be sort of the canonical campaign from the 20s to the 50s. And so if you want to put if you want to revisit some of these locations and you want to have continuity with the main campaign, you could. But you should also feel free as an author to create a different world, you know, set here, but with different characters, different detectives, different timeline. My timeline for my campaign is going to be consistent with real history. But like I said, I would love to see people make some supernatural cases. I'd love to see people make some cases. Maybe you could make some time travel cases. Maybe you could make a case where the player travels back in time. And so it's all looking at New York from the perspective of someone from the future or the past. I don't know, lots of possibilities. Authors can do whatever they want with this. There's no need for us to control how people use it. One of the things that motivates work on this project is the idea that people will be able to create new cases that I can play and enjoy, and people can have fun creatively using this stuff. So it really is fuel to the motivation to hear from people that are interested in playing it and interested in making cases for it. And I've been writing up little essays on how to write cases and what's the best way to start making a case. It's a little bit intimidating when you jump in and start writing a case. You don't know where to start. But Anna was in that position, and all of a sudden she's written 3 cases. I think once you get started, it sort of starts to fill out. If there's an automated process of converting a case document into the casebook, maybe you could extract all the lead numbers and have authors see a flag that a lead number is used somewhere else. That's a great idea. I can absolutely do that. In fact, that's a really good idea. I can make the tool do that, and I can have the tool collect all the different leads from all the different cases and show, you know, 10 cases you have someone going here, 3 cases have someone going here, and I can warn when someone writes a case involving a place that someone else has written a case for. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Anything that the tool can do that can automate is something that I'd like to do. So keep those ideas coming. Yes, I could absolutely make an automated sort of database that says for each location, here are the different cases that use it, and you know what time, what year each case is set, to help people keep their cases in continuity if they care about that. And it would be fun to see some crossovers, right? It would be fun to see a main detective lead for one case be a non-player character contact for another. You could imagine, I've got my main character for my case is Jack Deverell. You could imagine that he could be a cameo in another case, and someone else's detective could be a cameo in his case. You could imagine a scenario where all the contacts were different detectives in New York City, or each of the detectives at least had their home operations, whether they're a police detective or a private eye. so you could visit them. That would be another advantage if you're an author of getting in this period before it goes into production at the end of 2026, that we could make sure your investigator has a shop set up and a home address set up. Because once the directories go out, one of the disadvantages of having such a big directory set that's so expensive to print is that we can't just change it. So we really have to be sure when it goes into production that's it's as bug-free and as final as we can get it, because no one's going to want to pay another $100 for another amended set. And you can't really, the cases being written today for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective using the same basic map and directory that was created 40 years ago. And that's what we're kind of going to be locked into. Whatever directory goes out in 2026, it better be clean and as error-free as we can possibly make it, and as complete, because it's going to have to last for 40 years. All right. Well, a good talk. These things always get me rejuvenated to work on the project. I'd love to hear if you're interested in this project. I'd love to have you get involved in whatever way you want, even if it's just encouraging us to keep going. Visit the Board Game Geek Guild, give a little heart to the game, subscribe to the forum if the messages don't get too annoying. You can become a Patreon of this channel if you want to support the game financially. One of the purposes for my digital London directory for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective was to mark down what characters were used in the cases so fan case authors would know about them. That's a fun idea. There is a nice little couple of lists on Board Game Geek of people with a timeline of listing each case and when it occurs. And that's why I've started adding to one of the things that I track as statistics. Have I put in here? Yes, I've started having, these are all standard fields that you fill in when you make a game in the casebook tools, but there's the game system and then when the case is set, difficulty, playtime, so that the tool, the software knows when what year each case is, what date each case is set, so it could produce a little timeline. All right, a pleasure as always. I'll see some of you tonight or later this week for a playthrough. Thank you for your encouragement and interest in the project. Hope to see some of you more involved in it. For all of you who have been helping so far, thank you for your involvement in the project. Let me know your thoughts on text for the back of the box, title ideas, look ideas, either in the comments here or on Board Game Geek or Discord. I'll see you next time. Oh, that's not my right button. I'll see you next time.